All right, Martin, here we are again. I think this is the third edition of the Comeback Podcast. So there we go, number 3.
Yeah. What do they call it? What do they call it in America when a show comes back?
Oh, it's a comeback. We're making a comeback.
Yeah, they call it something else.
And we have to, what is it,
rewind or something.
Rewind, anyway. Something like that. Like it happened with Roseanne, and look how big that was, and look what they did. They fired her. Crazy. Anyway, that's another story.
It shows you how cool we are, though. We don't even know the right words.
Yeah, that's right. There are words for what we've been doing. Here we are again, and you're in Brisbane, Australia. I'm in Auckland, New Zealand. Let's start on the local front. I don't know how much you've been seeing this over there. Obviously, you follow the local news. But Air New Zealand engineers and the airline management are in talks over to avert possible strike action on one of the busiest travel days of the year. I believe that's December 21. The airline says they're in negotiations. They've been going into mediation, working late at night. It looks like the airline might have released the ballpark of what these people are on salary-wise, and they're grumpy about that. So that's where that is. I guess Air New Zealand can find a way to weather one day of strike and not really drop the ball?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be probably quite disruptive. I reckon one of the complaints that the engineers have had is they've been saying they've been working extremely long hours. Well, bolting the engines on and off those 787s probably wasn't helping.
Yeah, right. So the workers involved, line and hangar engineers, but also store workers and cleaners as well. So more than just the engineers. I mean, you've got to clean the planes.
Absolutely. And, I had no information apart from what I read in the newspaper. But, aircraft engineers, and a few of my friends are aircraft engineers, highly mobile. It is kind of...
It sure is a global skill.
I mean, you have one in the family, right? Jump in a plane, go and start a job somewhere else at the drop of a hat. So you got to be competitive, otherwise you leave.
Mind you, also, if you start to expect too much of the employees and they're sort of dying in the ditch because it's so cool to be working for this airline, when in reality, it's difficult sometimes to make ends meet. You need good people, right? You've got to have good people.
Yeah, and it's a much bigger economy in terms of aircraft and engineering is 4 hours away, and you jump on the next plane and you can start in a week or two.
Anyway, I guess they'll find a way through here. Here's a comment that you might want to pass judgment on. It says here in the news story I'm reading, there were several strikes by engineers and cabin crew last decade, but relatively little full-blown industrial action during the past 8 years, helped since 2015 by a new negotiating system, high-performance engagement. What is this high-performance talk all the way, all the time now? I mean, what is normal performance, low performance? Come on.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. It's actually immature.
Well, you got to cover it up somehow, give it a fancy name, and pretend it's something new.
You get that in sport too. High performance sport. Well, what were they doing? Low performance before that? I mean, come on.
And fundamentally, the job of a manager beyond a certain point is to get as much out of the staff as possible while paying them as little as possible. Let's be honest.
So you give it a label like high performance, like it's some sort of F1 race car, when of course it's not. Come on. It's just like, do your job properly and everybody will be happy. Anyway, so we wish them well to figure that one out. Do you have any pressing issues in Australia right now? I see Qantas brought back one of its old 747s. What, are they tight for capacity or something?
Well, it turns out it didn't actually get brought back. That it was reported incorrectly. So I read it and then followed it up, and it turns out, no, it didn't actually get brought back, but it is the oldest 747 in the fleet, and they're now using it for those worldwide charters, the Captain's Choice charters.
Yep.
It's on one of those.
Right.
Yeah, so it was an unusual routing, came in via Honolulu, 747. With a 4-digit flight number, which somebody reported as being a ferry number.
Yeah, quite often they are.
Yes, but it turns out it was. I went and looked it up in that, and it wasn't a ferry number. It was, in actual fact, just a charter number, 6053 or 43, and it's running the Captain's Choice charter, around the world charter. But it is an old 74 chugging along.
Yeah.
And it is quite interesting when I go down to my plane spotting place when I'm in Sydney, to actually see that many 747s, because Qantas has a few 747s, which is, like when you're in Heathrow, if you're down at Terminal 5 where BA is, you see a couple, but at the other terminals, you don't see them at all.
Yeah, and also Qantas park them over at their maintenance stands too, so you get a good lineup sometimes. Them, yeah. But that won't last for that much longer. That's,
Thai Airlines brings one to Sydney as well.
Okay. But, the clock's running out, isn't it? It won't be long before it'll be a thing of the past. Though the
It'll be long gone, yeah.
The crazy thing is, because I remember reading Joe Sutter's book on the 747, and I've seen interviews as well. Primarily, they thought that would be a short-run passenger airliner, but a long-run cargo airliner. So the hump was put in there to accommodate the front-loading, full continuous deck whole thing. It's all about cargo. And as it turned out, it became a massive passenger hauler. But, of course, the very essence of its design has now become an advantage again, because it lasts again as a freighter probably for another 10 or 15 or 20 years. Think about that. So, late 60s through to when it runs out of production completely, and it would have to be replaced by something, surely, then, what are we talking, 60, 70-year production run possible?
Yeah,
amazing.
Absolutely, it is possible. Yeah, it is incredible when you think how long these things have lasted. Talking about planes leaving service, look at Air France ditching half their A380 fleet.
Ooh. What are they going to do with them? I saw that, but what are they going to do with them?
Well, they're returning them to the lessors, so they didn't own them, so someone's going to have to try and release them, so we'll rent them out. I don't know. But
surely if someone puts it into that 830 configuration and sells seats so low you wouldn't believe it, there's got to be, we've always talked about that. That's got to still be an opportunity.
I think the problem with Air France is nobody wants to fly with Air France.
Right.
I don't think it matters how cheap they are.
But in terms of
when Air France took over KLM, everyone thought that was a really strange thing, because by all accounts, by all signs of success and everything, KLM should have taken over Air France. And people have been saying for a long time, KLM could run A380s, no worries.
Well, because they've had 747s for decades and they still have a few, so it's not much of a change.
And they've got that really cool over-wing loading bridge.
Yeah, those at Schiphol. Aren't they amazing?
Yeah, that's awesome.
In fact, that's an architectural wonder in a way.
Yeah, that's typical Dutch, just brilliant. And no one, I don't know if anyone else in the world did that.
No, of course, the other iconic terminal is the TWA at JFK, but nothing like those loading, I guess they're air bridges, but they can extend a long way and they can fit over the wing and everything. It's amazing. Yeah,
so they're loading and unloading that plane from two points. Well, actually 3 points, because they've got a first class, a regular cabin, then a second regular cabin halfway down.
I can't believe that France, with their huge tourism industry, can't fill up, or they're so bad that people choose not to fly them, but can't fill up an A380. It's amazing.
No, well, people don't like flying Air France. I'll avoid Air France where I can.
But why are they letting 777s go or something? Maybe they are.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we did. Yeah, of course, the headline is just the A380s, and I haven't followed it up any more than that. But I thought, and of course, a lot of people are jumping all over it, especially on a lot of the forums. Shows you the A380s. It'll never be successful, and all the while, Emirates goes and orders more and more and more and more. So, I do find it odd when, people just can't seem to fill them up. And I guess Air France is being chewed up by lots and lots of competition, because the moment you drop the ball, the competitors will be crawling all over you.
But again,
Air France dropped the ball long ago.
Where's a low-cost global carrier? I just don't get it, using A380s, like I say, with 830 certified all ready to go. And if, airlines are parking up members of their fleet, well, they'll have to find a price somewhere to be used. They're not going to just be taken apart at this early stage of things. So, someone should step up.
It's also interesting when people talk about stuff and they say, "Oh, I'd hate to be on an A380 with 800 people on it." Yeah, but I tell you what, you'd have a whole lot more room on an A380 with that many people on it than you got on a 787 with 250 people on it.
Because think about the fares.
9 abreast.
Think about the fares. That'd be half.
Don't even worry about the fares. Don't even worry about the fares. You've got more space. You've got higher cabin. You've got everything. It's at 800 people. You got a lot more space than you got in a 787 with much less than half.
You could halve or less the price.
You wouldn't, like I said, Paul. You wouldn't have to if you could fill it up. But yeah, of course, if you wanted to fill it up, you could make it cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. But there becomes a point. I mean, it's not that much cheaper than a 777 to fly.
Yeah. Having that many double the quantity, I just don't know why someone hasn't done that yet. Crazy.
Yeah, because you'd have to. I mean, I think the model is you'd have to have it full all the time because the landing fees and all that. If you're bringing in 800 people on a plane that's weighing 500 tons, the landing fees will cripple you if it's not full.
I know. I mean, it probably doesn't suit certain areas, but what about that just continuous circumnav going all the time? Don't know. Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure there's some routes where it would work. It'll be one of those things that somebody finally does it and everyone says, "Oh, why didn't we do that 10 years ago?"
Well, maybe those aircraft that Air France and maybe some other airlines will sort of put out of their fleet, they'll be the core of that.
Yeah, or Emirates keeps talking of it, but Emirates hasn't got rid of enough out of their main line to start up to put to their real cheap subsidiary. But you can imagine when Emirates is getting rid of them in blocks of 25, they do exactly that.
Yeah, we'll watch that space.
On certain Middle Eastern routes or South Asia routes.
I don't think Airbus they'll again play out the clock because I'm sure they can still see better days. You just got to get through the lean times. But we'll see. Speaking of Dubai, I see that they're saying that they're getting 15% better out of their 737 MAXs compared to the most efficient late model NGs they have in their fleet. 15%.
And GOL, that South American airline, have just come out and said they're very impressed with the 737 MAX.
That's incredible.
However, it is interesting that these reports are all being rolled out just after a major accident with a very, very unhappy customer.
Timings.
And lots of the timing's a bit too coincidental.
So the former head or the founder of the airline, name not right in front of me at the moment, of Lion Air, came out, I think, last week and said he wanted to cancel the order. He didn't say they cancelled it, but said he wanted to cancel the order. I think there's about 180. It's huge. Now, Lion Air needs those aircraft for its business model, you would presume. So if they do cancel with Boeing, it's going to be fantastic for Airbus. But is that just tactics?
Well, I think he's just really angry that they're blaming him because there's still these reports coming out by pilots and other airlines saying we weren't actually fully aware of the, what do they call it? The MACS or whatever it's called, the Maneuvering Augmentation Control System.
Yeah, it's an odd acronym, that one. It's quite a, anyway.
Yeah.
Who thinks these things up?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's quite a few people saying, no, we weren't fully aware of it.
Yeah.
And we weren't completely trained in it. And, it is...
Whose fault is that? Because surely the FAA have to approve all training. They have to certify the aircraft first of all, but going with that also is certifying the regime that trains the pilots and keeps them on their toes. So I wonder who ultimately is at fault.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a safety system which piggybacks onto the back of an existing system, and if you disable that system, it automatically disables the new one. But in the situation that was encountered by those pilots, they dismissed the primary system, saying, no, I know it's not that, and failed to understand that there's another system piggybacked on the back of it, which was actually causing the problem.
Well, if you don't know it's there, trying to work out that something that you didn't think was there is actually there, that's a real hard ask, man. You can't do that quickly under pressure.
Yeah.
Though you could always revert to manual again, and like I say, you got a runaway stabilizer, just hit those two buttons.
Well, that's my point. Maybe they didn't know they had they saw, do we have a runaway stabilizer? They looked, no, we don't, and they didn't realize there was this MACS.
They must have seen those wheels turning like crazy.
Yeah.
They make a hell of a noise. You can't ignore it. They've got a white stripe on them to get your eyes.
But it's and I get that, but then why does AA and these pilots coming out and say, "Well, we didn't know about it"?
Oh no, there's not knowing about it is, that's horrible. But what about just in the always when you really don't know, just switch it off.
Yeah, well, I guess it'll all come out when they give us all the details of the black box.
So easy to say. I realise that.
Yeah.
But that's what you'd hope would be at the core of training, isn't it? That if you're completely baffled, if nothing you can work out makes any sense, just switch off the automation, go to manual.
Yeah.
At least you know where
see,
you are.
American have just updated their training.
Well, of course
to include more specific details on the MCAS.
Well, they'd have to, wouldn't they?
MCAS, sorry.
Yeah.
Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System. Anyway, it's...
So I wonder if they'll cancel that order, because if they do, I see there's 4,000 on order. I mean, Boeing aren't going to take too much of a hit.
It makes no difference. But what I find, it's typical, I suppose, really, really cynical, is it suddenly GOL and Emirates come out and say, it's fantastic. It's
PR
exceeding
offensive.
all our expectations. You know, they could have waited a week.
PR offensive.
Yeah, offensive, quite offensive.
Yeah, it's the world we live in. Speaking of Boeing, I see the trumpeting, which is a bit rich because I don't know how much one of these things costs, but the new 777X and the various versions as BBJs, almost the golden distance of, Sydney to London sort of thing, 12,000. I think they're up around 11,200 nautical miles or something like that. Mm. That's massive range.
It's just an empty 777 with some couches in it. Flash as. And again, I think all part of the PR blitz.
Well, okay, so you think that might be connected as well?
Oh, geez. I mean, in their situation, they'll be looking for all sorts of any good news they can.
Who buys that machine? How many could they hope to sell? 5 or 6?
None. That's my point. It's a diversion.
Fluff.
Especially the Saudis won't be buying it because the Americans are in the business of trying to bankrupt them now. Well, Trump isn't, but the alternative energy and all that is basically putting them out of business in the next 10 to 20 years.
Because it would only be the Arab sheikhs and a few others who could afford anything like that.
Yeah. Did you hear? Oh my God! Did you hear the transcript of that Khashoggi thing?
No.
Oh, jeez. It sounds like a horror movie. You hear him complaining of not being able to breathe.
Yeah.
You hear some other noises, some human sounds, and then in the background you hear a saw starting up.
Crikey.
Yeah.
While the guy's still conscious, is that what you're telling me?
Well, I think they were in the process of removing his consciousness, and then they got the saw, and that really removed it.
I saw Senator Lindsey Graham of the US, who had been briefed by the CIA, this is like last week, doing a news conference, and had obviously been played the tape and had been given their information. The interviewer said, "Senator, is there a smoking gun?" And he said, "No, there's a smoking saw." Yeah,
terrible, eh? Terrible.
Anyway, that's too tragic.
So that's the market for the 777X flying hotel, and it's probably not, the market's not going to be around for an awful lot longer, I don't think.
But like the Japanese government had just bought a couple of 777-300ERs. The Turkish government have got a Dash 8. I've seen a few photos of that. So, there's a few people out there.
See, the Mexican government have just put their 787 presidential one up for sale.
Gave it back.
They've got to sell it.
Rejecting it, yeah. That was the president who claimed it was too expensive or something, right, when he was campaigning?
Well, no, the new president got in, and his campaign promise was, the day I get in, that plane's going to the desert, and we're going to sell it.
Is it one of those early ones that's probably not so...
I think it was one of the orphans that they...
I remember when the Mexican president came to New Zealand. I'm pretty sure it was the president, maybe 10, 15 years ago, and they came on a Mexican Air Force 757.
Oh, yeah.
And anyway, they arrived. I remember the day, actually. They arrived, and it was one of those howling northwesterly, like gusting 60 knots, right on the edge, right on the edge of operational. And they came in, and the Mexican pilot freaked out and went around and then came back. I think he tried twice, freaked out, and went to Oaxaca.
Okay. Yeah. Then, well, you don't blame him, mate.
No. It was a bad day. But I don't think they were kind of used to that,
Talking about that part of the world, so 3 days ago, the Brazilian courts put an injunction on the proposed, I don't know if it's a merger, the proposed joint venture between Boeing and Embraer for planes with a capacity of less than 150
You mean the one they could have had with the Bombardier, but didn't get there? Okay.
Yeah. So, this has been talked up as the savior of Boeing's small plane, blah, 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 and it might well be because those Embraers are pretty good. Yep. Although that Embraer E2, the second version, not selling well for some reason, not selling at all well.
I wonder why.
Very few sales. Oh, yeah, I wonder why. And I think on Friday, the first so-called A220 went into service with Delta. But anyway... so the Brazilian court put an injunction in, it's going to stop this nonsense, blah, blah, blah. And today the injunction was lifted. So it looks like it might still go ahead.
Why was it blocked?
Brazil. that's Brazil. That's all you can say. The talk is that the courts blocked it so that the incoming government could get a chance to review it and put their stamp on it. And maybe the government said, listen, no, we're happy. We can change things the way we need to. Let's get negotiating, because it's a win-win, I think, for Brazil. I don't think it's a win-win for the aviation industry, losing another manufacturer, but who knows? Embraer might end up designing the new 73.
They don't necessarily lose a manufacturer. It's just that the power base of it changes, because all that manufacturing is going to stay in Brazil, isn't it?
Apparently, the main reason for Boeing is that Boeing is just about to face a avalanche of retirements, up to 5,000 engineers and technical people leaving within the next 5 to 10 years. And they don't want to hire more people because shareholders don't want that, but they could use cheaper Brazilians to do a lot of that work. Okay. Especially on the bottom of the market, the small market planes.
Bigger picture.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm surprised. They should have done that with Bombardier.
They should have, but possibly, and I get this, possibly Boeing didn't want to end up working with a bunch of quasi-French Europeans and the Canadians. As we can see from what's going on in France at the moment, they get a lot angry a lot quicker than the Brazilians, I expect.
Boy, don't they? Fancy being made to have those high-vis vests. I mean, that is a demonstrable sort of exemplar, to use fancy words, of the nanny state, right? It's
a farce, isn't it? It's an absolute farce. And
to make people to compulsorily have to have them, I can see why they're out on the motorway saying whatever they say in French.
Well, I'm surprised soldiers from certain countries don't have to wear high vis.
Yeah, especially in the jungle, right?
Yeah, and don't give them guns because they're dangerous.
Oh dear, but it's sort of it's kind of too officious,
Oh, it's crazy. I'm talking about soldiers. The first 2 F-35s arrived in Australia this week.
Oh,
I think they arrived on Sunday. Yeah,
that's a great way of doing the Australian taxpayer out of their money.
$135 million a pop, apparently.
Yep, crazy.
Yeah, a lot of money.
What do you get for that?
You get to buy into the United States industrial complex, I believe. I think that's a lot of it. But it's quite interesting watching
high price.
Watching the head of the program. It's like a U.S. Air Force general, and the way he was talking. When you buy one of our aircraft, you're buying into our industrial program, and it's almost as if he works for the F-35 program, which is probably more than the military. It's like a military Lockheed, General Electric mix-up. But it was quite interesting. If it hadn't been for the uniform, you wouldn't have realized he was military.
Right.
He was just a big CEO running a program. They got their own suite of officers, and I get that, but it's kind of. It's not about the aeroplane.
Yeah. And it's all paid for by Mr. and Mrs. Hard Worker.
Yeah. And Australian hard workers. Australians are contributing quite a lot. Australian businesses are contributing quite a lot to the program.
Yeah.
I think
$135 million for how big are they? They're not even very big.
No, it's all plane. Yeah.
Aren't the Chinese supposed to have something called a quantum radar? Have you been reading about that?
Yes.
That can detect Chinese, all this stuff?
Anyway? Chinese have really gotten busy lately. Did you see that picture of the mock-up of the J-20?
Yeah, I saw that. Wow.
Yeah, and the Americans have come out and said, no, we built it. The Marines have built it. It's a training mock-up of the J-20, which is their F-22
That's it.
analog. And by all accounts, I read an analysis of it last night. The guys have taken models and they've tried to work out the physics of it based on where they think the engines are and the lifting surfaces and the angles and everything. And, they reckon it will be very capable aircraft.
Wow.
And a German guy who's actually seen it up close, he says the finish is unbelievable.
Yeah. Oh, I see, just zipping back to the earlier story, the judge in Brazil, Victorio Guizio Neto, he says he cast out that the proposed deal would be good for Embraer's bottom line. The reason is very simple. Boeing is not giving up anything in this transaction. He wrote. Yeah. That's.
Yeah, I mean, and the Brazilians are quite, how do you say, nationalistic. And I mean, this is a country, I don't know if it still does, but for a while it had its own TV standard. It was a derivative of the French system, which was, I believe, was CCAM.
CCAM, yeah.
Yeah, but it was a different TV system. When I was working for a company, we were trying to sell. We sold a whole lot of systems to Brazil. The place was a nightmare because it had different power all over the country.
Oh,
because it's such a big country, they'd bought some of their power stations. Back in the early part of the 20th century, they bought some German power stations and they bought some American power stations. And so this region was 110, and that region was 220. So everything had to have transformers.
Just to be easy.
It was really, just to keep you on your toes. And they were really strict about what you could send to Brazil and what you had to buy in country and all of this type of thing.
Well, I think you kind of look after your own economy and you build your... I could see why maybe that judge had those thoughts. We've built this business up. It's in Brazilian business. What are you bringing to the table? But obviously that...
And he's exactly right. He's exactly right. The only thing Boeing is bringing to the table is heavy involvement in a number of programs, but only if those programs are successful.
Yeah. That Southwest 700 overrun at Burbank, California. It's the second time it's happened in about 10 or 15 years. Remember that one that ended up next to the gas station?
Yeah. Yeah, Burbank's good for that, isn't it?
The thing is, though, they've got that, special stuff at the end of the runway that crumbles under the undercarriage and slows you down real quick. Boy, does that do the job.
Yeah, just stops it instantly, yeah.
You got to have that, man. I mean, you've got to have that. You can see why.
Yeah. I wonder how easy it is to get them out.
The material had sort of like shattered, and it had sunk into the mud. So it probably doesn't take too much weight or dynamic force to break it up. But I'd like to know, I wonder what the condition of the gears are. If they can survive basically intact, then that's a lot less to repair the plane.
There again, Southwest probably quite happy if a few 700 gets scrapped, eh?
They've been in the fleet a long time, those things.
Exactly, yeah.
It seems to happen there. It looks pretty tight. Weather looked bad, so maybe late landing, bit of a tailwind perhaps. I think there was a tailwind. And but that stuff to stop overruns, that works.
Yeah. Well, it's like those truck, what do you call them? Those arrestor beds.
I've seen that on the way into Perth. Darling Range, is it? They've got that arrestor surface, on the side.
Yeah, there's a few countries that have biggest roads and a bit of space tend to have them, Paul. I don't know where you'd put one on the Rimatakas.
Well, one lane of the Rimatakas would have to be that. But very, very few vehicles seem to go off there these days.
No, it's amazing. It amazes me. It amazes me the size of trucks that go over the Rimatakas. And so, oh, well.
There's always great pics now of any incident, and likewise there were pretty good pics of that overrun. Do we know where Air New Zealand are with their 787s? Because they're off to Chicago with them now, and apparently they're the ones with the newer engines, but...
well, when I last came through Auckland, there were none parked out the back there.
Okay, so that all gone, right, okay.
So they might have been in the sheds, I don't know, but there wasn't one parked out the back with there might have been one. There might have been one still with no engines on it.
All right. Well,
I wonder if they'll go for 800s if they want to do their super long and thins.
A350, mate.
I don't know. Well, but it's...
No, who knows?
Yeah.
I wonder how those A321s are bedding in.
Yeah, I bet that's pretty seamless, actually, eh?
Yeah. Former Prime Minister Sir John Key, who is a member, I think, of the Air New Zealand board now, has come out at the time we're doing this podcast, which is, Tuesday mid-evening. Air New Zealand strikes would result in cancellation of literally thousands of flights. It would be a real tragedy to disrupt Christmas for those flying as the December 21 strike looms, said the former Prime Minister. Well...
I don't know about a tragedy. It'd be bloody inconvenient.
Here's the thing, though. What you can see is that there's a public PR battle going on here and it's all right for Sir John Key, multi-millionaire, and I'm sure he's a very nice guy. Never met him personally myself, but he's a board member too. Are board members allowed to do that?
Yeah. You see.
I suppose they can.
Well, he can do it as a free citizen, can't he? He can say what he wants, but yes.
But it sounds like he's advocating for the management position, and he's saying that these nasty engineers are going to screw up your Christmas. They don't care about you. That's that sort of thing.
Greedy engineers.
Greedy engineers. Yeah, they're already paid $115,000. How much do you get?
Yes, that's another story. That is an issue, and it's Yeah, thin end of the wedge and all that type of thing.
But it's true, though. You know, you look at, I got a daughter who's going into teaching, secondary school teaching. You look at the comparable wages and work demands on a daily basis of the Australian secondary school science teacher compared to New Zealand. New Zealand science teachers getting ripped off. It's not little, it's huge.
No, the Australian science teachers overpaid, Paul.
Okay.
I would never promote this type of behaviour, but I do quite admire the French when they get angry. Well, there's no doubt about it. Let's go and burn a few cars.
I agree with you. At least you've got an idea that at some point you go too far and it's a problem. Macron's found that out. He's ditched those fuel price rises. Apparently it was up to equivalent of $8 a gallon.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous.
I mean, who are you crazy, mate?
Yeah. Yeah, well, the same thing's happening in New Zealand, isn't it? Isn't it 5 cents a year or something? Or was that already ended?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
There's never any thought to doing things modestly that work, but in a modest way. It's all, well, you know, people can choose to be part of that or not, but, you know.
Yeah, in France, you know, it's a relatively big country. And once you get out of the major centres, it's quite spread out. If fuel gets to that price and you've got to drive any distance, it's a killer. I mean,
well, a lot of the people in Paris who go to work, I think there's an average distance they go. I think it's 8 Ks or 9 Ks or something. And every week, at the price of gas that it is, it's actually like a significant impact on their weekly overheads that's grown in a very short time. How did he ever think? And it was all for, you know, climate change and lowering emissions. Yeah, that's all right for you, you know?
Yeah. Have you seen what Luxembourg's done?
Yeah, they've made a free public transport. And why wouldn't you?
Yeah, there you go.
We should do that.
Put your money where your mouth is.
That's what we should do here. At least gold coin, but no more.
Yeah.
But, hey, we can fantasize all we like. Anything that we need to look at before I update everybody on Bring Our Birds Home? Oh.
Well, that's, I think we've pretty much covered all the stuff. There's dogs outside are whining.
I can hear the dogs.
Can you hear them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're telling you to wind it up, mate.
Yeah. Oh, hang on. Let me go and sort this one out.
Here we go, folks. Live in the Aviation Podcast. Martin is going to sort the dog out.
Get in here. Get in. You too.
You've always been good with animals, Martin.
Come on, Rocco, get inside. Shut up.
That's it, Martin. You tell him who's boss.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to ask a question?
Yeah, well, okay. Well, Paul, I think that pretty much covers all the stuff I wanted to talk about. How's Bring Our Birds Home going?
Well, things are going well. This Friday, we're having our trustees meeting in Auckland. We're going to get together, and I'm going to show the rest of the trustees the efforts I've been making in connecting with people who can give us money. And we will be talking about how we can pull together our team for launching a credible dismantling effort that will get the business done. And I'm looking forward to doing that. We've got some pitches out at the moment to some businesses. I'm going to be printing 2,000 flyers very soon that will be going around some aviation businesses around the country, maybe hopefully to Australia as well, so people can, they can know how to give. They can go to the Give a Little or, you know, do a deposit or send us a check. So that's good. And we expect any time, I know I mentioned it last time, I'll say it again, and I make no promises, any moment. I know that we will hear about the DC-8 being good to go to buy. Then we'll have 2 ready. We are talking with the North Carolina Aviation Museum, where they have Sully's plane, the Miracle on the Hudson plane, as their major artifact, to try and organise some media event because our 737 is there. And when we go and get it, Martin, or even go and look at it, it's a very precious thing. So I want to try and get some media event like the Kiwis have come for their treasure sort of thing. They love a good story, you know, so I've got a guy helping me there now. I think that'll do quite well. We should know in the next few days there. And my goal is for 2019, is to have at least one of the planes back in the country. I don't know which one. I don't know how it'll turn out, but that's what I'm going to try and do. And I think that there's a possibility of that. So you just keep grinding away. You keep taking little bites out of the elephant, and slowly you wear it down. And I think the feedback that I get is just fantastic. This is something a lot of people want to happen. They want it to happen. When you get a lot of people wanting something to happen, it's a lot easier than just you know. So I think next year is going to be a really interesting year for this. It's going to make a great story. All we need is a few good things to go our way. It's like that.
Yeah, and you'll keep us updated on an almost weekly basis, or however often we end up doing this show. There's a lot happening at the moment. We might not be regular, but it'll certainly be weekly.
Well, if it really picks up in the news, well, there'll be a demand for that, won't there? And we'll also see from listener numbers. So that's my Bring Our Birds Home update. And normally I put up a video update to our social media. But I got to say, I could make all the video updates in the world, and actually being back with the podcast is quite a good way because we can, in an audio way anyway, bring people up to date. But I want to come back with a video update that really means something. You know what I'm saying? Something that is really announcing a great step forward. And I appreciate everybody hanging in with us. And I know it's slow, and I know some people think, well, okay, you got great pictures, you got great videos, interesting things are happening, but where are your planes? I would remind people that we do have the jet engines, the JT8s. That's something. So I get all that. So the next video update, Martin, will be when I have some news that really means something, All
right, cool.
Now, I've been thinking about this podcast. We've got a few people that we're going to try and start bringing in to the mix, maybe who could give us updates from other parts of the world, or maybe even be able to join us on a program when we record our program. And that's going to get interesting because we'll be able to get perspectives from other parts of the world, even though we're keeping it Kiwi. Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And they'll be able to tell us what's happening in their local neck of the woods. And, they're the ones who see the little quirky things that we miss, and they can report on that. So we're talking to a few people who might be able to contribute there. And this thing could become a little more expansive, but still keeping the Kiwi thing, because that's us. That's us.
That's what it's all about.
Okay, well, and we'll keep an eye out for stories, and people have made some suggestions. We will look into and find out a bit about what the Chathams guys are doing, Air Chathams. Apparently they've got a 737-400, someone's told me. I saw 2 Saabs of theirs at the airport, which means things are expanding. And, of course,
yes, I saw the Saab, the 340. That's a great regional plane. I flew with.
It still works well, doesn't it? And there are plenty around, too. There are lots in the world. Didn't American Eagle get rid of a whole lot of their ones? Hundreds. They had hundreds.
United, anyway. But somebody's got rid of a lot of them. Yeah,
they had hundreds.
They're awesome planes to fly in.
Yeah. And, of course, what was the one, the 2000 after that? Even better. Wow, wasn't that a cool
ship? That was a rocket ship.
Rocket ship. You flew on that in Crosshair, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
I was hoping that would be a natural progression down here, but they went to the Dash 8.
People were saying that the price of fuel when it was high, the Saab 2000 was basically the same price to run as a small jet.
Right.
But interestingly enough, it was as quick as a small jet.
Well, and 50 seat, wasn't it?
Yeah, but of course the public, especially the American public and to a certain extent the European public, if there's a choice between a jet and a prop, even if the jet's a little bit slower, they'll always fly with the prop. So.
Remember the ATP, the thing that came out of the 748? That was cool.
That was very cool. It used to catch fire a lot, though.
Oh. I saw a whole bunch of them parked up in United Express colours at a place in Florida.
They were a great plane. I mean, and when I say catch fire, fuel used to collect in the jet pipe, and it used to be quite alarming when it belched flame. It wasn't necessarily that dangerous.
But they got along. They were fast, and they had big capacity. What was it, 70?
Yeah. No, they were fast,
748 was a great plane. It was a great plane. I flew on the last Mount Cook Airlines 748 flight in the cockpit from Wellington to Christchurch. I remember that.
There you go.
The very last one.
Yeah.
ZKDES was the registration. Anyway, okay, so good to talk. So we're going to find out more around the traps from people about what they're doing, maybe a few interviews as well, okay? Because we can, right? We can.
We will.
Good to talk again, Martin.
See you later, Paul.
See you in a couple of weeks at least.
Yes, cheers.